Welcome to Pulse Check, where we have quick conversations about how to help people across Alabama live healthier lives. Today, we're talking about something that impacts all of us, but often gets overlooked when we think about health: community, belonging, and connection. Joining me today is Amerika Blair, Director of Innovation for the Montgomery Mayor's Office, a leader in public innovation and community development, a military leader in the United States Air Force Reserves, and the current president of the Junior League of Montgomery as the organization celebrates its 100th anniversary. Through her work in government, leadership, and community engagement, Amerika focuses on building stronger, more connected communities and helping people feel seen, supported, and empowered. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. That was so beautiful. Thank you.
Oh, well, you are an amazing, accomplished woman, and it is such an honor to have you here.
Thank you.
So,
Such an honor to be with you.
thank you. So, when we talk about health, we often focus on physical health, but how important are community and belonging to our overall well being?
When we talk about community and belongings for overall well being, Angie, I like to think about the pulse of our community, and that's connectivity. I think that we've gone into this digital age where oftentimes we are siloed through our digital devices or on social media. And while that's great, it is more important to feel a health and a sense of belonging in person. And so for me, it's greatly important. It is one of the top priorities to make sure that everybody feels seen and heard. And it's not only just for our health, but it's just for a sense of well-being overall in the community overall. And especially, we're living in the same community, and oftentimes we live in a small community, but it's large, and we don't know what's happening across town. So being able to break down those barriers and going across town and experiencing something new is terribly important for our well-being.
We hear so much about loneliness, the loneliness epidemic and disconnection, and how we have more access than ever before through digital means, like you mentioned earlier, to other people, to events, to news, to know what's happening. But we're still so disconnected. What impact do isolation and lack of community have on people emotionally, do you think?
You know, the impacts that are seen emotionally in a lack of community, and when I mean community, I mean in-person community, and that digital community is also important. Emotionally, what I'm seeing is a disconnection. I'm seeing it come out with the way that people communicate in a regular setting, whether is at a restaurant or that's at school. Your ability to communicate your feelings, ability to have conflict resolution, your ability to talk about the hard things and then come to a resolution to say that we can agree to disagree, or it's okay not to have the same opinions on something, but we're still going to be in community with one another. I think over time, we've seen further disconnection and discord in that emotional intelligence that we're seeing in communities across the world because of that lack of connectivity and lack of belonging. And so emotionally, I think it's draining us on so many different levels that we may not understand right now, but we'll understand a little bit more in the future. I think COVID was definitely a picture for us when we were socially isolated. And now that we've come back together in some means, I'm seeing it either even in community work and the way that people show up to volunteer, the way that people show up for work. People are more isolated than ever and more cautious of sharing some of those vulnerable moments because of the lack of emotional intelligence.
Those sound like skills that if we don't use, we will lose. So when you're behind a screen and you can just dash off a comment with very little thought, that's very different to the real world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you've spent so much of your life serving others and building community.
Yeah.
What do you think service does for you personally, or you can answer it more broadly and generally for people? What does service do for us individually?
Service for me, serving others, service for me, it does a lot of things. One, it breaks down those barriers and it offers me a different perspective. As I said, it's easy for us to get isolated in our own perspective and think that that perspective is just the only one or the only option out there. But as a leader, it's important to make sure that we have a holistic point of view of perspectives as we make decisions that are going to be impactful for a full community or multiple communities. And so for me, it allows me to go into places that I probably wouldn't have thought about before, or go back to places that, I've been disconnected from for quite some time and really get a new perspective of what it means in this current stage. It also allows me to stay humble and stay grounded in the community based work. We often, as leaders, we think about what our vision is and what our approach is, but it's not really us leading that. It's not really us to have that vision. It is the vision of the people that we're serving. And so, as we're making these decisions, we may be the face of it, but it's really a decision for the folks that we are serving. So my life is about service. My life is about making sure that I'm fully grounded in what my purpose is here on this earth, and then what the purpose I have for the folks that I am serving. And that's, not just one community, that's every single individual that is going to cross over to what the output may be.
I love that. That's a beautiful answer. And your service with the Junior League has been, just amazing, especially this year, all the things that you guys are doing to celebrate 100 years. Why do you think that organizations like the Junior League still matter today?
You know, Organizations like the Junior League still matter today. One, because we are a service based organization. I know that we've seen over the last 100 years many different organizations pop up, but it takes a lot, especially as a nonprofit organization, for you to sustain for 100 years. The Junior League of Montgomery has been a founding member for several different initiatives across our community, and we've poured millions of dollars back into our community. So, again, going back to ensuring that we are operating of what is needed and not what we think is needed is important. And so, being able, and we're doing on a volunteer base too. It's not like we're getting paid for this. We want to show up for our communities, and we're women who lead in not only in the community, but in different aspects of our lives. So making sure that we're training people to be leaders in our community, and they're not only serving in the Junior League, but serving in different roles in our community or across the globe, making sure that the communities that we touch have an impact, that extraordinary impact, and they have a way to sustain after we leave the commitment that we have made for them, and making sure that we're showing community who we are. We do things like holiday market, which is a fun time, a great time to shop, but it's also more importantly a great time for us to raise funds to give back to the community. So I think it's a shop with a purpose type aspect, as well as college and career night. That service opportunity allows for us to expose thousands of scholars in our community to opportunities that they may have not otherwise known. And so to take that type of level of support on from an organizational standpoint point as volunteers for 100 years plus, that means a lot for our community and other organizations who are doing similar work. It means a lot to be able to sustain that type of framework, because we know what's better for our communities when we're deeply embedded in our community.
I love that. We know what the community needs when we're in the community. How does having purpose and being involved in something bigger than yourself, how do you think that impacts our mental health?
For me, being a part or knowing your purpose impacts the mental in a positive aspect, but it's also kind of weary, right? I think that sometimes we get overwhelmed with so much that is needed to be done. And I'll speak for myself. I sometimes get weary and knowing that it's so much that needs to be done, and where exactly is my footprint deeper. I've been studying, and I'm a woman of faith, and it's constantly growing and evolving, but I've been studying the book of Esther and thinking about how Esther evolved and her purpose, and how, she was deemed that person to come in and be the woman for the job for that particular aspect. And she didn't have a silver spoon. She wasn't ordained in that way, but she was able to speak even when she was scared to speak, even when it wasn't popular to speak. And that was because she had that purpose driven over her life. And I like to see, other individuals who have that purpose over their lives, who are doing it for purpose and not for any other things, not for ego, not for self gain, but for purpose. And so for me, that purpose allows me to grow as a person, as a professional. It allows me to grow inside my household. It allows me to grow in every single room that I step into, because I know I'm stepping into that room with purpose and nothing else. And so I don't shy away from serving the communities that need that support. I don't shy away from making those decisions that is based in data, based on community need. And I go even harder for communities who need to feel that sense of belonging.
That. So, a lot of young people feel disconnected right now. What advice would you give someone who is seeking connection but may not know where to start to find meaningful connection?
The advice that I would give to a young person who is seeking connection and may not know where to find that connection is trust me, I'm a digital person. I love to pick up my phone. I love to shoot off a text message, scroll on TikTok and scroll on Facebook, but it means something to show up in community. It means something to touch someone, to have a conversation with someone. Even if that someone is someone you've never thought that you would have anything or any type of connection with. I'll tell a quick story that has been a grounding purpose for me for this year, and I'm going to use it as a challenge. I was recently at a space where I was engaging with a woman who is opposite of me, opposite in all ways. And she grew up in Montgomery in the 50s. And then she moved away and she came back. And she said one of the ways that she grounded herself in community when she came back was to go to someone's house for dinner that was completely opposite for her. And they shared a meal and they talked about how that meal was important for them culturally, how that meal was important for them socially. And they shared conversations together. And that allowed her to build community with people who were not like her, who did not think like her, and it allowed her to open up her perspective. I think that it is so easy to go where it's comfortable and so easy to stray away from those conversations or those challenges that will challenge us to grow and stretch our perspectives that we don't do it. And so my challenge for every young person who don't know how to get connected is to go to spaces that make you uncomfortable and do things that make you uncomfortable and talk to people who may make you uncomfortable with the sense of belonging. You have to be safe, psychologically safe. So if that space is not psychologically safe for you, then definitely stray away from it. But challenge yourself and stretch yourself and put your phones down for at least 4 hours of your day and go out in community.
I love that. Go out in community, find someone who is maybe a little different, and maybe just be curious and invite
Yes.
their curiosity without judgment
Yes.
as well. Do you think that strong communities can improve health outcomes and quality of life overall, like in neighborhoods and even, broader?
Yes, absolutely. Strong communities definitely have an impact on your health in multiple ways, right? Not even talking about infrastructure, but talking about the quality of life, talking about the opportunities that you have within walking distance to a green space, to talking about opportunities you have in walking distance to entertainment or to a grocery store or to some type of activity that is beyond you and your house and making sure that the air quality is in good control. Strong communities build everything. And I think everybody is deserving of a strong community, however you classify and define what that strong community looks like for your space.
Your work often focuses on human centered policy and innovation. What does that mean to somebody who may not understand or be in that role?
Yes, human centered design and policy and innovation. I know innovation is a buzzword and people often attract innovation to technology. In my sense, innovation is doing something differently, is bringing novel approaches inside your governmental entity. And the tagline that I like to use for my team is doing government differently. And basically, what that means is instead of making the decisions inside City Hall, we make decisions outside City Hall and community. We keep the community with that qualitative data. So what the lived experiences are telling us from our residents that we're focusing on, we keep that data at the center and core of all solutions. And we are risk avergent. So what that also means is instead of making a decision that we're going to lead with and we're going to blanket this decision for the entire community, we're going to test it to make sure that it is actually the decision that we need to make for that solution. And then if we're going to measure it and if it doesn't work, we're going to tweak it. We're going to go back and we're going to tweak it to get to a semi perfect approach to then implement. But we're doing this with the community at every single stage of our work. I know we often, as leaders, period, regardless if that's government or any other place, we often just think about what this means for us. But we're thinking about an approach of what this means for the people who are actually going to receive it.
I remember somebody a long time ago, a boss said, it was nice that you gave that employee a cake for their birthday and you celebrated, but what you didn't know is that she doesn't like chocolate. You like chocolate, Angie, but she likes vanilla. And so if we're going to give a gift, if we're going to buy a cake, if we're going to do a thing, let's take a second and figure out what the other person's likes, needs, wants, and wishes are as best we can. Right. So that reminds me of that. I think that's beautiful.
Yes, yes, great.
Well, what are some realistic ways people can become connected and engaged in their communities right now? Let's say I am 27 and I've got no plans tonight. It's Friday night. What could I do?
Let's see, if I were 27, what did I do at 27 with no plans? I can't remember because I can't remember yesterday. Um,
Amen.
if if I advice for someone who is 27, no plans, or however old, you could be 47, 87 with no plans. Advice that I have for you is volunteer. Find an organization that you can volunteer your time. And I know that it may sound like this is a pitch for folks to join the Junior League, and it may be, but it is really a way for you to build yourself and meet community members who you may not have known otherwise. I've built some deep connections from folks who I didn't know before I volunteered my time. So find an organization, whatever that organization is. If it aligns with your vision and your purpose, find that organization, volunteer your time. It could be 1 or 2 hours out of a week. It could be multiple hours out of a week. Find an organization to volunteer. Two, go to a restaurant and go by yourself and sit with someone who is a stranger. I go back to that meal approach. We Southern people at the core, and we love to eat. We love to share a meal together. And you can find some of your deepest connections by just sharing a meal with someone and talking it out and asking them questions to get to know who they are. And then three, put your phones down, read a book. I know that sounds like, I may just be in a silo still reading a book, but what that means to me is picking up a book that you know nothing about and exploring possibilities and break down those barriers of what your assumptions may be and get another perspective. And if that book is something completely opposite of your thought process, then that is an even bigger plus. I'll say this as a caveat to that last piece of advice. I remember in high school, I was in a debate league, and my teacher often challenged me to go on the opposing side from what my normal belief was. And so that helped me strengthen my perspective. And sometimes it shifted my perspective. And I think oftentimes with that disconnection, we're going off of what our assumptions are. And in digital worlds, we are creating silos based on algorithms and based on what we think is a common approach. But being able to holistically look at the point of view by opening perspectives is important for that sense of belonging and connectivity.
Love that. Challenge yourself, read something new, put yourself in not maybe not difficult, but different places than you normally would
Mhm.
be. Well, so last question, what gives you hope about the future of community and connection across Alabama?
You know, what gives me hope about future of community and connection is conversations like this, Angie. People like you, honestly, people like the people I see in community when I'm out in community, which is often because again, I think that we are defined off of what we see on social media. And so when you're in community, it's a whole different story out there. And so being able to show up and seeing people who are committed to keeping that same pulse for the plug of the podcast, keeping that pulse of community and the heartbeat of community, it gives me a lot of hope. I know that we sometimes are saying that we're in sorrow times, but for me, I see a different perspective because I'm out on the ground with people and I get to have those conversations. And even if I don't see people who I want to have those conversations with, what gives me hope is the ability to call them and have those conversations and invite them to the table and continuing to challenge myself and to know that things like this, conversations like this, and opportunities like this for other people to have conversations, that gives me hope.
I love that. So, Amerika, thank you for your service both in the military and here at home. Is there a website where someone can learn more about your work or maybe more about the Junior League? Where would you point folks who might want to know more about you and specifically about the things that you're into?
Yes, absolutely. Well, first, you can connect with me individually on LinkedIn. My name on LinkedIn is exactly my name, Amerika Blair. You can learn more about my work there, learn more about the different initiatives that my team is leading that as I post there. Also, the Junior League of Montgomery is jlmontgomery.org. And our team is embedded in the mayor's office. So we are operating on his priorities. And while we don't have a presence on montgomeryaL.gov on purpose, you can find the different initiatives that the city of Montgomery is uplifting there.
And if you want more information about Pulse or want to view more stories like this one, you can go to alabamapulsemagazine.com. If you have any ideas on topics or guests we should interview, let us know in the comments.